I want to get Mark Lamont Hill in here. He's Morehouse professor and our political commentator at CNN. Also Pete Dominick, talk show host from Sirius Radio, who's been taking the pulse of his listeners about what's happened in Charleston. And also legal analyst Phil Holloway. And Phil, I'm going to begin with you because there were some things that were said by the NAACP about insisting that the DOJ do everything it can to label this a hate crime and go after it as a hate crime. There's been a lot of talk as well about not just the hate crime issue, but also the domestic terror label. And I just want to get your thoughts, because jurisprudentially speaking, that can really complicate a case that could be a slam dunk. But morally, is it necessary?
It is a slam dunk. He's confessed to it. There was a witness, of course, that survived. So I think it's important for it to be labeled for what it is. It clearly was a crime motivated by hate. That being said, it's important for South Carolina to take ownership of this as a state. Its criminal justice system is well capable of dealing with this. The governor has come out and said this needs to be a death penalty prosecution, because when South Carolina takes ownership of it, it says this is not who we are, this is not what we're about, this does not reflect our values as a state.
There's no hate crime legislation. There's no statute in South Carolina, which is why I asked, does the federal government need to come in and label this and pursue it as such, even if it's a slam dunk in a state case, just to tell the community we hear you?
They absolutely can call it a hate crime in the trial. They don't need legislation to do that. They can say that this was a act motivated by hatred against black people. So they can send the message nationally that that is not what that state is about, and that does not reflect their values.
And just quickly to the gun issue that Drew Griffin pointed out earlier, his family gave him the money for his 21st birthday. He purchased the gun. Does the family have any exposure at all in terms of the gun purchase that was used allegedly to murder 9 people?
Certainly if they knew what it was going to be used for. What I'm most concerned about is why he was permitted to purchase a gun while he was out on bond. There should have been some kind of bail restrictions set by these judges that says if you are on bail, you are not permitted to possess a firearm. And
it does that only for a felony. Of course, he was out on the misdemeanor for the drug offense that he was charged with. Stand by, Phil, for a moment, if you will. Mark Lamont Hill, jump in with me, and Pete Dominick, and I'm going to let the two of you toggle this out for me. Our morning editorial meeting was rife with people who were almost speechless, but for the most part felt helpless. Speechless, helpless. The speech comes, but the helpfulness, where will it come best? I'll start with you, Pete.
It's got to come from us. I think it's specifically, and I mean us, I mean white folks. I really do. I know this is radical to say, and a lot of people are going to be outraged by this, but we need to look at our country's original sin. Our founding fathers were liberators of from the crown, but they didn't liberate black folks, and they didn't fight to. That wasn't the case. We have statues in honor of Confederate war generals. We wave that Confederate flag all over this country, and still in South Carolina. It doesn't need to be brought to half-mast. That needs to be brought down. We need to honor what happened in the history of this country, and I think it needs to start with us, because black folks have been living with this this original terrorism for their entire lives, something we haven't.
Senator Mike Johnson, a Democrat in Denver, Mark, posted a note on a church near his home. He actually got up in the middle of the night, drove over to the black church, and posted a note saying, "I want you to know I stand arm in arm with you today in your grief. I refuse to let one deranged man speak for me, and I also refuse to stay silent after his abomination." And that's white leader telling black congregants, you know, we're with you. But is that enough to say? Is it enough to go to black churches? There's a call for white people to go to black churches. What is needed?
Yeah, I mean, symbolic action is significant. You know, symbols matter. The Confederate flag that waves in South Carolina to this day matters. It's a symbol of where we haven't grown, where we haven't developed, and how we continue to be wrapped up in the pathology and logic of white supremacy. So I want symbols to be made, not just tearing down the flag, but white allies filling up black churches this Sunday as an act of resistance. I want white people to stand up and say this is wrong. Posting notes on the church, of the door of the church, is great. But we also need substantive policy changes. We need substantive investment in communities. We need to dismantle white supremacy. That ultimately is the thing. And as Pete said, that's white people's work. You know, I don't want him to get the death penalty. I want us to focus on giving life to people who are suffering under white supremacy.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, Pete Dominick, thank you. And Phil Holloway, as always, thank you for your thoughts, too. Stay tuned, 2 o'clock today. There's going to be an appearance by the man who is suspected at this point of being the shooter. Thanks for watching. Will starts right now.